Hey guys, welcome. This week is Parsha Shalach, and we have a mitzvah that's beloved by many people, the mitzvah of challah. In this week's Parsha, Hashem tells us that while baking challah, you should take a piece of the challah and give it over to the Kohen as a present. So one of the trumas, one of the presents we give over to the Kohen, and it's a very special mitzvah amongst women. It's a very special mitzvah in general. There's a lot of great kavanas, a lot of brachas that come with this mitzvah. The Medrash actually explains that this mitzvah actually combats the doings of the sin of the Eitz Hadas. In other words, when Adam and Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, there was a certain effect in the world, right? And the mitzvah of Challah combats that. And obviously showing that the mitzvah of Challah is a very, very powerful mitzvah. But in order to fully appreciate what exactly it does, we kind of have to take a step back and appreciate what did the sin of eating from the Eitz Hadas, eating from the tree of knowledge, affect in the world, and therefore, by giving challah to the kohen, by taking a portion of our challah, we affect a solution, a response. As you'll see, much more than a response, a realignment of whatever the sin of the eating from the tree of knowledge has caused. So to appreciate this, let's take the narrative around the tree of knowledge. Adam and Chava were seemingly living, a nice life together. They were just being in Gan Eden, in heaven, really loving it. And then they eat from the tree. And all of a sudden, there's this awareness. There's this, awareness of a nakedness, awareness that there's something wrong, and they go get dressed. So the question is what was this awareness, or what was this knowledge that this tree contained, that all of a sudden, once they eat from this tree, they're knowledgeable? So if we just look at the narrative, we get an idea. Originally, Adam and Chava were totally calm, totally okay with who they were being, how they were being, just living. And all of a sudden, there comes a certain awareness that there's something wrong with the way I am. There is some reason to get clothing. And what's explained is that before Adam and Chava ate from the tree, there was this flow, this amazing connection between the neshama and the body. You want to say Kabbalistically between Oiris and Kalim, where there was just a flow, and they were just being a piece of Hashem. They were just being a piece of Hashem in the form of a human, and living, loving, and enjoying it. Right? Comes this sin when they eat from the tree of knowledge, and all of a sudden there's a strong awareness of different things going on inside of them. That awareness, I'm saying, if you want to break it apart, you could kind of say is like every part of their body kind of was speaking for itself. I don't mean like the hand speaking, but the consciousness of the hand speaking, the consciousness of every body part, and that all of a sudden created awareness and separation and potential to zoom in on different areas and give it the full focus it needs, but not in a place from a godly place, rather from a place of isolation, place of separation. Let's take this to the state of being. How does it affect their state of being? Practically, it affected an awareness of self. Now, I'm using awareness of self because a lot of people will use, let's say, for example, self-aware as a compliment. We're speaking about something like that guy's very self-aware. They'll use self-conscious as, a derogatory term. That guy's very self-conscious, he's overthinking stuff, right? Aware of self is kind of, I'm hoping it's a parv word, it's a word in the middle. And what happens is when they ate the tree, there became this sort of aware of self, a certain sense of separation from self, a certain awareness that could be lonely, could be isolating, but kind of also breaks the flow of just being, right? The flow of just showing up fully as a neshama in a body that fully fits. And this awareness kind of gave room for separation of purpose, and therefore for disfocus and misuse of stuff. And if you were walking into a business meeting and there was a possibility to cheat, and you had a desire to cheat, your face might turn red. You might feel a certain sense of shame. You might feel a certain sense of that's wrong, right? A certain holding back, which might affect you in different ways. But this awareness of self in a isolated, non-flowing manner, and the ability to misuse different parts of you, and so on and so forth, created room for shame, created room for the ability that I might be entering this with the wrong intentions, and I might be entering and therefore creating a certain distance, a certain strong sense, if you want to say, of loneliness, isolation, and in short, self-consciousness. So what happens is, in short, Chet Yetzadas invited into the world, invited into the psyche, a certain sense of aware of self, self-consciousness, and the lack of flow and the ability to misuse ourselves, the ability to get lost in ourselves and to totally lose focus. Now we're saying that the Challaah, the mitzvah of Challaah, is a solution to the Chet Yetzadas, right? We're saying that the Medrash is saying is that as an answer to Chet Yetzadas, as an answer to self-consciousness, as an answer to aware of self, and potentially the misuse of self, the misuse of different parts of yourself, the solution is giving Chal. So the question is, what does that mean practically, right? I mean, a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are, if they're not suffering, they're getting hang-ups and held back from fully showing up because of their self-consciousness. So this idea that Challah is the solution is a very big treasure that the Torah is technically telling us. So what does that mean? I want to know. I want to know how to combat my self-consciousness. And if you're telling me Challah, giving Challah to the Kohen is the answer, break it down for me. Let me know. So the Rebbe explains by breaking down a Mishnah from Pirkei Avos. And the Mishnah goes like this: if there's no bread, there's no Torah. Now, on a simple meaning, what that practically means is, if you don't have money, eventually your Torah studying is going to get weakened, you're going to be disfocused, you're going to be worried. And eventually, from a practical end, you're not going to have food and you're going to have to go either begging, working, and, you're just going to be basically busy the whole day working, paying up debt, and you're never going to get a chance to learn. So if you're not having bread in your life, you're not having food, you're not having money, practically your Torah is going to cease at a certain point. The Mishnah continues that if there's no work, if you're not working and studying Torah, eventually you're going to come to do Averos. Now, on a simple level is, if you're not tired from learning Torah, if your brain's not tired and your body's not tired, you got still energy in you. Where do you think that energy's going? Right? That energy's got to go somewhere. Right? So if you're not going to be tiring yourself, fully using yourself to your full potential with Torah and physical work, you're going to find yourself in a place of being very vulnerable to sin. So on one level, seemingly, the answer that's being given to deal with your self-consciousness is just be busy, right? Be busy with your mind, constantly be thinking Torah. Be busy with your body, constantly be tired. And before you know it, you'll drown out your self-consciousness. You'll stamp it out. You'll make sure it has no voice in your head. Now, even though that's a solution, it doesn't seem like such a fun solution, such an honoring solution, a dignified solution. It sounds very, depressing, as in you're depressing every part of you with busyness, with, tiredness, right? It doesn't sound like you're really honoring yourself. And also, on another level, we learned that everything is supposed to be used for the good. If we're just being busy to get rid of our self-consciousness, our self-awareness, that doesn't seem like we're giving it a chance to find, the gold in it, the godliness in it, the potential that it has in Mashiach times, right? It's not gonna. How are we gonna use this for Mashiach times, right? And especially we learned in the Rebbe's Maimarim and previous Maimarim from different Rebbe's that Chava actually introduced the aware of self, this self-consciousness, this self-awareness, as because it potentially could bring a lot of good to the world, right? She saw it as a solution, a higher level of Mashiach, a higher level of Galus, a higher level of Avaida. So this idea of stomping out your self-conscious with the whole day learning and the whole day working doesn't seem like an honorable solution, honorable to yourself, honorable to self-awareness. We want it during Mashiach times, we want to elevate it. And this doesn't seem like honorable to Chava's choice, which obviously is questionable, debatable. But either way, it doesn't sound like we're really respecting ourselves or this idea. So the Rebbe explains that actually you're not here to stomp yourself out by being busy the whole day, but rather we have to appreciate why we have to be busy working and busy learning throughout our waking hours. Why is that our purpose? Why is that what keeps us in line? And the Rebbe explains is the reason we actually have to work and learn Torah is on a higher level is because actually we're supposed to be busy the whole day davening and learning Torah. Oh, interesting. So work represents davening. Work represents prayer. How does that look like? Obviously on a spiritual level, that means davening. But what does that look like in the workforce? Because that might help us appreciate how we're working, we're busy, we're using ourselves, and yet we're respecting our self-conscious, our aware of self, right? Our self-awareness. So to introduce this idea of work as a form of prayer, one of the idealistic work forms as a yid is actually to use your talents for Hashem, right? Chayvas Halvavi speaks about, the same way a lion has the ability, has the perfect body to tear apart its prey, and has the perfect digestive system to digest meat. Cows have the perfect digestive system to digest grass, right? Every animal has the perfect body for what its purpose is. Same too, we're supposed to take some time, analyze what our talents are, what our skills are. And that is probably where Hashem wants us to be working. That's where Hashem wants us to be making a dwelling place by having an honest job and, treating people with, dignity, respect, and making a dir v'tachtonim with that job, right? So that's what an idealistic job would look like. But we'll get to a regular job in a few minutes, few seconds. But on an idealistic level, we're taking the job that fits us, right? Now, how does prayer look like that? How does working equal prayer? And the answer is if you're doing something that you believe you should be doing, and you're humble, and you're aware, you're acknowledging that these gifts that you have for Hashem are from Hashem, and that's why you're working in this workforce, you're probably going to be really thanking Hashem while davening that you have it, while working that you have these talents. You're also probably going to be asking Hashem to, to help you be successful to deliver the results that you're looking for. And also when it's hard, you're going to ask Hashem, please help me get the results through me, right? So even if you're not doing this, I'm inviting you to do this, to take time to ask Hashem. First of all, thank Hashem for the talents you have. Ask Hashem to deliver. And when it's hard, ask Hashem to have the strength to hold up and deliver. So working could be a constant prayer. While you're working at your job, you could be constantly in prayer, right? And obviously, if you have a hard job that's not aligned with you, there's obviously a lot of prayer there also. I mean, there's just, make sure it works. God, Hashem, please, right? And then, when it's going smooth, there's a lot of thank you. But we could be constantly busy in prayer at work. To appreciate this better, what is davening? Davening is a certain sense of getting close to Hashem, inviting your whole perspective to realize, taking your whole perspective and saying that's Hashem, right? First on a level of acknowledgement, all what's going on is Hashem. Then in a level of intellectual, right? You sitting and appreciating how much Hashem puts into every tree, every computer, every idea. And then, you're constantly getting whatever you're dealing with. You're bringing it a godly perspective. You're mapping it out as 100% God to the point where you hit Shema and you're saying Hashem is one. Everything I'm seeing is one, right? So davening is lifting yourself up to Hashem or bringing Hashem closer to you. Really the same thing. You're just revealing how Hashem is everything, right? So, and on another level, davening is asking for a need, right? Even if you're a high level tzaddik, it's also asking for a need. You're asking Hashem to you are aware that there's a higher level of consciousness that you could be feeling Hashem, and you're spending the time davening to become aware of that consciousness. So it's all inviting Hashem in, asking Hashem for help, and acknowledging Hashem in there, right? Based on this, we can appreciate why davening / working is the answer to self-consciousness. Self-consciousness plagues us and bothers us and makes us feel isolated because there's a lot of feelings of loneliness about different feelings we're having, about different awareness that we're having. But what if we took a moment to acknowledge that these feelings are from Hashem? What if we took a moment after acknowledging that what's going on inside of me is from Hashem and ask, what does Hashem want me to do with this? Right? This would respect our awareness of ourselves. This would respect our consciousness, right? Because we're not running away from it. We're becoming aware of it. We're asking ourselves, what does Hashem want us to do with this? In other words, lining it in other words, putting it back in track with what Hashem wants, and then using it, right? Someone who is self-aware shows up to wherever he shows up at a higher level. Someone who's self-aware is able to deal with so much more, right? So at this way, when we're busy working / praying, we're not just crushing, we're not being disrespectful to our consciousness. We're honoring it, respecting, we're saying is, you're from Hashem. What should I be doing with this awareness? What does he want me to do with this? And it's showing up at a much, much greater level, which this actually helps us. This actually gets us to the next step with also learning. What is learning? Why are we learning and davening? The answer is because davening is us slowly climbing up to Hashem. Learning Torah is inviting godly ideas inside of us. So the first thing we're doing is we're sitting and praying. We're sitting and working and becoming aware of how much Hashem's everywhere. And then, or even before, we're inviting godly ideas. So we're constantly becoming more and more aware of how to see whatever we're feeling, whatever we're being, whatever is going on inside of us as godliness. And we're seeing on many different levels. So if we're busy with Torah and davening, we're busy constantly aligning ourselves, our self-consciousness, our awareness in a godly map, in a godly world, and we're constantly inviting it to go to higher godly levels. The Rebbe points out, this is also the idea of Challaah. The idea of giving the kohen Challaah, you give the kohen a piece of dough, right? And you might also give them a piece of Challaah, an actual piece of Challaah. I have to actually do research into that. But what happens is you took dough that was already grinded and already kneaded. What does grinding and kneading mean on a Kabbalistic level? Grinding means you're taking the pieces and you're crushing them and making them usable, giving it the possibility to turn into flour, right? So what is that in our own life? What is that in our own avodah? What that practically means is humbling ourselves, slowing down, and becoming aware that everything around us, everything inside of us, all the sensations are all from God. In fact, they are God, right? And then mixing the water, kneading it, is adding the Torah perspective. Torah is compared to water, and you're mixing in your humble awareness. You're giving over of all your perspective, of all your ideas. It's a giving over to Hashem, becoming ready to hear a godly perspective, and then pouring water and mixing the godly perspective, acknowledging the godly perspective. And at this point, you're ready to be given as a present to Hashem. So you take your piece of challah and you hand it over to the kohen. You take your piece and you're ready to be totally one with Hashem. And what does the kohen do? The kohen eats the challah. The kohen reminds you that what is the main purpose? The main purpose is to be serving God down here, right? The kohen, we need a kohen in a physical body to be here serving Hashem in a physical base of Mikdash. So just in short, what do we say here? We say challah, the mitzvah of challah, is combating the sin of the tree of knowledge. What was the tree of knowledge? The tree of knowledge was what was caused by this tree of knowledge was a certain strong sense of self, a strong consciousness, right? And how does Challah combat that? Is first of all, on one level, is davening and learning, or working and learning. What does that practically mean? That practically means, what does that practically mean? That practically means, using your talents, or even if you're not using your talents, showing up to work and asking Hashem for help, acknowledging it all comes from Hashem, asking Hashem through the hard times to give you the strength, and then bringing in a godly perspective, right? And what in the actual challah, you're sitting and grounding, you're making yourself humble, ready to hear a godly perspective, handing over whatever is going on inside of you to Hashem, saying it's all from Hashem, and then waiting for the water to collective, and like this, you're ready to be given over to Hashem. You're ready to hand over all your talents, all your gifts, your whole consciousness, what brings you special, what makes you great as a human being, to Hashem, by bringing it over to the Kayan and then grounding it when he eats it as a physical presence. Enjoy, Hatzlacha, and take care. Have a great Shabbos.